Chapter 135 to 136. The next day came and Yujito was settling in well. Unfortunately, the operation to round up the remaining samples of Bijou Chakra couldn't wait, despite the surprising addition of Yujito. Yesterday, Konan acquired Yanbi's chakra, Rei got hold of Ichibi's chakra, Tsunade took a liking to the Nanabai girl, and got some of her chakra, while Mei brought in a freaking Nibi Jinchuriki. Now only Sanbai, the most important of the bunch, remained. Why was he the most important? Because Rei wholly believed in using whatever waves Akatsuki will create in the future to provide yet another cover for his next steps. For that, Sanbai had to go to Yagura. Well, there might or might not be a scheme of Rei, or two involved in that, but details aside, even the messages of Yuzora was here were basically just warnings to other villages that Yuzora can threaten them. At least, that's what the villages would see, and partially, that was really their purpose. But Rei had something else in mind when he asked his girls to relay this message after their tasks are done. These messages were a direct provocation to other small gatherings of strong ninjas. Groups such as, nah, there was no other group than Akatsuki like that. Or will be, since Akatsuki was not yet created. Anyway, the problem with these mercenary underworld organizations was rather simple. They mostly relied on a good reputation, especially at the start. Akatsuki needed to be the best in the underground sphere to gather sufficient funds. So, Rei thought hard and long, basically from lunch to brunch, and at the end of his enlightenment, he found a very simple solution to the equation. He just had to create his own organization and make it famous. Not through mission success rate, rather through attacking other villages or their strong ninjas. Humiliate a village here, poke a Jinchuriki there, perhaps show a middle finger to the Reikage and voila, Yuzora would be famous. As for attacking Jinchuriki, Rei knew it had no relevance as of yet, but later? When Obito finally becomes dead set on Project Moon Eye. Oh, Rei would pay a fortune to see the expression of the future Obito when he finds out that some group called Yuzora was in possession of the Nibi Jinchuriki, and that they attacked some other Jinchuriki as well. When the boy finally realizes he has competition, better yet, once Yuzora gained notoriety, Akatsuki would have to step up their game in order to get more funds, so Rei hoped they would come to light sooner than in canon and other nations would focus on them. He certainly planned to help this to happen as best he could. Not that it would be so hard since he knew Akatsuki were a bunch of arrogant self-centered pricks, meaning they would never rest until they claimed first place in the notoriety. Rei decided they could have it, and he would even give some intel on them at the right time to the right people. The more eyes on them, the less on him. Nobody could say he was not generous. I feel bad for the girl, Tsunade impassively said, looking at the cave where Rin was screaming bloody murder as the Sanbai was in the process of being stuffed into her. It was already evening, so she found a spare minute to visit Rei, Konan, and Mei observing the place while Ringo was preparing herself. This was her mission. She could have been a good medic if only she learned how to freaking fight. Stupid fangirl of that Kakashi boy. All she knows is healing, which is nice but utterly useless in the field if you are captured in a second. Tsunade brutally summed up Rin's situation, not leaving the girl any dignity left. Sure, Tsunade wanted to see at least one medic on a team, but that didn't mean she would suffer an incompetent medic ninja who could not even properly throw a kunai. If there was something Tsunade hated more than people who dismissed her, it was medic ninjas who didn't train to fight and kill. I am ready, Ringo suddenly said, clad in her own black cloak with a hood and 2 chakra metal swords strapped on her waist. She was doing some serious observation for the last hour. Rei and the girls got the prime seats to watch how one of the best assassins of Kiri worked. And even Rei had to agree that he didn't put as much thought or consider as many angles as Ringo did when planning on executing an attack on the enemy base. It was both weird and gratifying to see that Ringo learned something useful even after her apprenticeship to him ended. Rei had set up some observation seals inside the cave. How, not even Ringo, who meticulously watched it, knew, but thanks to them, he and his girl sans Ringo, who was currently sneaking closer towards her first target, the 2 guards at the entrance, could see what was happening inside without actually having to leave the comfortable nearby hill. Atta girl. Ringo made yet another 2 lads lose their heads. Mei exclaimed, watching 2 heads fall towards the ground and Ringo catching them before they finalized the fall and gently placing them on the ground. She then fluidly caught the falling bodies and soundlessly dragged them into the bushes before also depositing the heads there. Yeah, well, that was fast. Rei nodded. Ringo's movement of preventing bodies from creating any sound was certainly well practiced. Even he doubted he could do as well as she due to the sole reason of him not really having the needed muscle memory for it. Obviously, by now, Ringo was doing it on instinct alone. Rei then snapped his fingers, activating the observation seal, and a hologram-like structure of the cave appeared on the right side, while a screen appeared on the left side in the air. The girls gawked at it, seeing something like that only in cinemas, and Rei smirked. It is so easy to impress. He shook his head. While this world had televisions, in fact, his Bairi company sold the best of them. They were not really that widespread nor modern, so seeing such a screen was something of a novelty for the girls. Well, that just means I will have to add television to the house in the dimension. Maybe we could have a nice evening with popcorn while watching movies together. Ray stopped thinking about it when he noticed Ringo bypassing the first line of defense, starting to take care of the Chunins from behind. Let's see what is in our newest member, shall we? Conan calmly said with a slight trusting smile. It's not like this is hard for Ringo. This mission is actually right up her alley. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? Mei snorted, crossing her arms. She wanted to end this quickly by smoking the Kiri ninjas out, but Ray put a quick stopper to that, so she was now a bit butthurt. Tsunade just watched in amusement, not really knowing Ringo's skill set or ability, all that well due to her spending much of her time in Konoha. She stayed quiet and just observed. Ray sighed. He liked Ringo and didn't like her endangering herself before she was deemed strong enough by him. Alas, the woman wanted to prove herself, and here they were. His gaze sharpened when she finally felled the last Chunin in the first line of defense. While he was impressed she didn't alert anyone, Ray knew this was just a start. This is where the Ray-all challenge begins. Ringo released a sigh of relief as she laid the body of the last Chunin in the first defense line soundlessly on the ground. She could feel how rusty she became at this during the years of war and the half-year she spent in the Yuzu Islands with Ray. Normally, she would not even feel weary, but now she was actually a bit annoyed because her instincts were a bit delayed. She almost alerted the enemy to her presence on 3 separate occasions, which was unforgivable in her opinion. The more I train with Mei, the louder in my approach I become. Sigh, that girl is really a very bad influence on me, isn't she? Ringo bitterly smiled, walking up the wall until she crouched upside down on the ceiling, sneaking deeper into the cave. Ray said the Rin woman managed to run away, but I see no way she could do such a thing with all these ninjas around. The Mizukage must be bonkers if he really wants to unleash Sanbai in Konoha. Sure, some tree huggers would die, but Konoha would gain Sanbai, which in turn would surely be an unimaginable loss in the opinion of the council. What is the old coot thinking he is doing? Ringo mulled over the actions of the third Mizukage as she silently walked on the ceiling, high above the heads of Kiri Jonin. It was quite easy to avoid any and all sentries when she knew the protocols, and how Kiri trained their Jonins and ANBU to counter this exact way of infiltration. Hence, it didn't take long for Ringo to be behind the second line of defense, the one manned by Jonins. She turned around and started looking for lone targets. Ringo knew she would be unable to terminate every Jonin and ANBU, but the success of her mission depended on the number of Kiri ninjas she would be able to dispatch without anyone noticing. She only needed to thin the proverbial herd in order to create an opening for herself. After 3 minutes of searching, Ringo scored. She found 2 Jonin going at it like rabbits in a remote area of the cave. Needless to say, the man and woman could only look at each other in shock as her sword ran them both through. I am really good at connecting people's hearts, am I not? Ringo smirked, but it didn't last long before she noticed the man pissed himself as he died. Right into the woman, and Ringo grimaced. I didn't need to see that to lead a happy life. Ringo hopped onto the ceiling again and searched some more through the Jonin area. Her next target was 2 men playing cards in a room sculpted into stone. Obviously, these were the highest-ranked Jonins, since they were here only to observe and command. Not like it helped them when Ringo appeared crouching on the table, and before they could even widen their eyes, each of her 2 swords removed 1 head. Thankfully, she didn't need to worry about the sound of falling bodies, since they were in a quite remote area of the cave system. These chakra-hiding and self-soundproof seals of Ray are plain cheating. Ringo pouted a bit before gathering all valuables, weapons, and exploding tags from the corpses. Not like they would actually need them anymore. Ringo proceeded with her mission, creating a lighting clone to kill via quick shock, wrapping her fist in lighting chakra and ramming it from the back through the chest of one ninja, using her swords for quick kills, or simply throwing a shuriken or kunai at a vital place fast enough for her victim to be unable to react. She managed to kill 12 Kiri Jonin out of 36. She counted. Honestly, not everything was that smooth. Many of them noticed something off, but thankfully her instincts and experience were good enough for her to dispatch them before they alerted others. But, now the hardest part, huh? Ringo frowned. She knew ANBU were specially trained for this. She also knew she could not keep the fact that some Jonin disappeared hidden for long. Moreover, she had no idea what kind of tracking jutsu bullcrap would the ANBU have. For all she knew, they might already be alerted to her presence, and preparing despite the Jonin being utterly oblivious. After all, only very skilled trackers can ever make it into hunter squads of Kiri ANBU, and that most of the time means some special type of jutsu for such things. Ringo moved towards the ANBU area, this time not on the ceiling because she knew the ANBU would be too careful for her to let her sneak on the ceiling. While the Jonins were occasionally looking up, the ANBU would have hidden sentries posted even on the ceiling and the walls. In fact, it was a standard procedure. This might be a bit of pain in the ass. Ringo mentally grumbled as she spotted no less than 4 ANBU, guarding every single of the 3 entrances, to the third and final defense line in the cave. Two stood right in the middle of the corridor, while one was above them on the ceiling, hiding in the shadows. But it was the last ones who worried Ringo. They were hardest to find for the sole reason of being members of the Hozuki clan, which meant they hid in a puddle of water near the wall slightly behind the two ANBU guards standing in the corridor. If I want to get through, I will have to either soundlessly kill the guy on the ceiling in a way that won't alert anybody. Bah, that's impossible. Ringo whined. This setup was incredibly well thought out. The guy on the ceiling watched the entire corridor from above, and that meant he had his eyes always planted on the two obvious guards below him. The guy in the puddle, however, served more as an ambusher for any idiot who made it this far and was incompetent enough to not spot an unnatural puddle on the ground. No laughing. It actually happened more often than not in the shinobi world. The real problem was the puddle guy had a clear line of sight on the guy on the ceiling at any given moment, meaning no matter who Ringo attacked, the other three would be alerted the second she showed up. After 10 minutes of observation and consideration, Ringo decided to go for the middle path. The guys on the left one looked a tad bit too familiar with each other. Not due to how they acted, but due to how deceptively relaxed they were in each other's presence. ANBU never took their guard down, not even towards other ANBU, but the guys there trusted the others, which meant they had a fair share of missions together under their belt, which in turn meant their teamwork was better, which would be bothersome and could cost Ringo precious seconds. The ANBU guarding the right path, on the other hand, were certainly not familiar with each other. Their senses were so high-strung one almost noticed Ringo with the corner of his eye before she stepped back into the shadows. She had to be still for an entire minute for the guy to finally decide it was just his imagination. The fact there were over 30 Jonin, and even more Chunin ahead, surely had a value in him, deciding not to check more closely. Sneaking on these guys would be a plain bother. That left Ringo only with the middle path, which was still troublesome, but clearly, the puddle guy was not familiar with his teammates and was alert. The guy on the ceiling had hots for the female standing guard in the corridor, and his gaze lingered on her from time to time, while the woman and the man standing next to her in the middle of the corridor were clearly former teammates, since they were relaxed to each other. These guys had their guard up too, but their teamwork would not be as good as the guards on the left, nor were they as alert as the ANBU on the right path. Ringo narrowed her eyes and joined her hands into a hand seal as a plan formed in her mind. Clearly, she would not avoid the fight, and the fact the missing Jonin would be noticed sooner or later made the decision for her. She could only confront them. Let's do this. Kaga Bunshin no Jutsu, she whispered,